You may have realized that being healthy feels different than it did in the past now that you're over 50. If you want to maximize your health potential but don't have time to read through overwhelming pages of Google links, this is the show for you. Welcome to Healthy Tips After 50. We love doing the research, finding solutions, talking to health experts, and learning what works and what doesn't. Now, your host. She spent the last 25 years dedicated to feeling her best and is here to share her best findings with you, Susan Rosen.
Hello, everyone. This is your host, Susan Rosen, and my guest today, who is revisiting the podcast, is Glenn Livingston. And Glenn is a PhD and all into food and cravings. So please, Glenn, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more.
Well, I didn't get my PhD in food and cravings. I'm a clinical psychologist by training.
Yes.
And I'm also a formerly obese person by training. If you stop by the Woodbury Country Deli in 1999 to 2004 or so, you probably would have found them out of chocolate and pizza because I beat you there. So a long time ago, I had a pretty serious food problem myself, and I was almost 300 pounds and had really high triglycerides. And more importantly, I couldn't stop thinking about food. I was just obsessed with it all the time. And I come from a family of 17 therapists. So when things break in the household, everybody knows how to ask it how it feels and nobody knows how to fix it. And I say that in jest because, my approach originally was to try to heal myself psychologically. I thought I could, this was like an inner wounded child thing, or, if I could fill the hole in my heart, then I wouldn't have to fill the hole in my stomach. And I went on a really long journey for a couple of decades to try to fix that. And what would happen is I would get a little thinner and a lot fatter every time. I learned a lot about myself. It was very soul enriching. I, cried and screamed and revisited all of the events of my youth and did everything you're supposed to do in psychotherapy. And it made me, I think, a better person, but it didn't really help with the food. At the same time as I was doing that, though, I was building my clinical practice. I was a child and family psychologist. And I was also consulting for the food industry and the pharma industry, but most of the food industry. I was doing advertising research, and I was exposed to these really millions of dollars that were being used to pay research scientists to figure out how to engineer these hyper-palatable concentrations of starch and sugar and fat and salt and excitotoxins that would hit the bliss point in our reptilian brain without giving us enough nutrition to feel satisfied. And the result of that was that we would crave more. And that really had nothing to do with, my inner wounded child, or whether my mama dropped me on my head or her mama dropped her on her head. That was a totally external force, a non-psychological force that was creating a type of food addiction. I looked at the advertising industry and I saw that, about 5,000 or 6,000 messages about food were beamed at us over the internet and the airwaves every year. But was maybe a half a dozen of those are to eat more, whole fruits and vegetables. It's all about bags and boxes and containers. Right. And, advertising affects you the most when you think it doesn't affect you. Everybody thinks advertising doesn't affect them, but that's where the advertising industry wants us, because then your sales resistance is down. So another external force. And then I looked into neurology a little more, and I recognized that it seems to be the reptilian brain that's generating this, oh, screw it, just do it response. When it perceives there to be an emergency, or it perceives there to be an opportunity to gather a wealth of calories in a small space for a little effort, which unfortunately today is available on every corner and convenience.
Please. Yes.
But the reptilian brain, it doesn't really know love. Like, figure this is the reptilian brain. It looks at the world from a perspective of a bad college drinking game. It's like, like eat, mate, or kill. Do I eat that thing? Do I mate with that thing? Or do I kill with that thing? Right? It's the mammalian brain on top of
Mm-hmm.
it, which either evolved or was placed there by God. It doesn't really matter. Um, but that it says before you eat, mate, or kill that thing, what about your tribe? What about your family? What impact is it going to have? Delay that order. Delay that
Okay.
order. And then the neocortex on top of that says before you eat, mate, or kill that thing, what
Mm-hmm.
impact does that have on your long-term goals? What impact does that have on your health or your weight loss or your fitness, or for that matter, your music or spirituality or art or work or contribution to society?
Yeah.
And so this thing, this reptilian brain, which pushes all the rest away, it it doesn't know love. It knows eat, mate, or kill. And so here I am spending decades trying to love myself then, when
Mm-hmm.
this thing is the thing that's responsible for the problem, doesn't really know.
Yeah.
Um, Long story short, I did some very big studies. I looked for all these personality variables, found some interesting things, but nothing really made a difference. Eventually, I got fed up with it, and I said, well, maybe I just need to plan. Maybe this love yourself thing is not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I need to be the alpha dog of my own mind. Maybe this is like, when sub, when a subordinate wolf challenges the alpha for leadership, the alpha doesn't say, "Oh my goodness, somebody needs a hug." It growls and it snarls, right? And it says, "Get back in line or I'll kill you," right? And I said,
Exactly. Yeah.
well, but when you look at the way the brain is wired, what we think of as our relationships and thoughts and long-term goals and contributions,
Mm-hmm.
we're wired. The neocortex and even the mammalian brain is wired to be superior to this thing down there. And so we really can be the alpha wolf. So this is
Mm-hmm.
what I did. It was a pretty crazy thing to do. I was never going to teach it. I didn't anticipate being famous for it. But I said, okay, I need to have a clear line in the sand so
Mm-hmm.
that when this thing is trying to take over, I know that's what's happening. So I said, what if chocolate always started my overeating episodes, my
Mm-hmm.
chocolate craving? It was usually just a little chocolate, quote unquote.
Oh yeah, just one bite, right? Yeah.
Just one bite, right? And then, of course, it was more chocolate, and then it was pizza and lattes and donuts and on and on and on, anything that wasn't nailed down. Um, and that's true. It's unfortunately true.
No, that's so appropriate. I totally understand. Yeah.
So I did this experiment to take control of chocolate, and I said, I'm only ever going to have chocolate on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, I didn't even say how much. I just said I'm never going to eat chocolate during the week and do what I want to on the weekends. And that way, if I was at a Starbucks on a Wednesday afternoon and I heard this little voice inside of me that said, hey, Glenn, you worked out hard enough. A couple of bites are not going to hurt. You can start your silly rules again tomorrow. I could wake up and say, well, wait a minute. That's not me. That's my reptilian brain, which at the time I called my inner pig. I said,
Mm.
that's not me. That's my pig. My pig is squealing for pig slop. On a Wednesday afternoon, chocolate is pig slop. I don't eat pig slop. I don't let farm animals tell me what to do. Excuse me, it's a little hot today here in Florida. And
Oh yeah.
and as crazy as it sounds and as embarrassing as it is, that would give me those extra microseconds. It would wake me up and give me that little bit of extra time to consider the choice I was about to make and why I was making it. It would kind of snap me out of the trance and put my neocortex back in control.
Uh-huh.
I wish I could
Uh-huh.
say it was a miracle and I was immediately better. It wasn't. But what was immediately better was this feeling of confusion, this like
Mm.
mysteriousness about what was taking
Mm.
over, this feeling like I couldn't control myself. That was gone. Now it was a matter of decision making. And sometimes I'd make a better decision. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
eating better because of that. From there, I adjusted the rules back and forth to find things that I really wanted to comply with. And then I started to be able to open up that space a little more between stimulus and response, between
Mm-hmm.
seeing the chocolate, hearing the voice, and actually doing something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And once I had that opening, I started to say, well, this voice inside of me seems to be trying to justify things. Like, you can just start your silly diet again tomorrow. what if I examine that logic? And I looked at that logic, and it turns out that it's false. It's not going to be just as easy to start your diet again tomorrow,
No.
because what fires together wires together. So if I have the thought, just start again tomorrow, it'll be easy to start again tomorrow. And then I reward that thought with chocolate, I'll be more likely to have that thought tomorrow. I'm digging a deeper groove. If you're in a hole, you got to stop
Makes sense.
digging. Always use the present moment to be healthy.
Yeah.
And so I now call that a refutation. And for about 8 years, that's all I did. I would refute all the things the pig was saying. Sometimes I could do it in the moment. Other times I would make mistakes and I'd have to refute it post-mortem, like after I ate a whole bunch of crap.
Yeah.
But over the course of 8 years, I kept a journal of all the things that the pig said, and it made a tremendous difference. And I got thin over time. I got thin, and my triglycerides came down, and a lot of things got better. That would have been that if I wasn't getting divorced. It would just have been a private journal, but I was getting divorced, and we were intertwined in some things we were doing, and I needed to do something else. And I happened to be a minor part of a publishing company since, given all of my business dealings. And I was talking to the CEO, and he said, maybe you should write a book. So long story short, I wrote a book. We published it. I knew what I was doing marketing wise because I'd been in marketing for a long time, but I had no idea how much it was going to take off. And I wound up with 1 million readers and 20,000 reviews and 7 other books.
Wow.
And now I could be in a bookstore and people don't quite know my name, but sometimes they'll point at me and go, "You're the pig guy. You're the pig guy."
Really?
So,
oh my God. Wow.
So that's my story.
How fun.
That's who I am. And since that point, I've been keeping very careful track of results. We work with a couple of thousand clients. I have a bunch of coaches that work with me. And for most of the 8 years that I did that, I worked on fixing people's thinking about food, taking away those justifications. And I found that when you take away those justifications, the previously greased chute from stimulus to response becomes much harder to go down. And people got better like I did, and they got better a lot faster, like in a couple of months. However, there was a little chink in the armor. And the chink in the armor was every now and then you could fix people's thinking, but every now and then they get this response, which was like, "Oh, screw it, just do it."
Yeah, right. I'll
Like,
just have it, I'll go back to
sure.
my diet tomorrow. Yeah.
Well, they don't even think. They won't even say that because I fixed that thinking for them. They'll say, "Just screw it, just do it. Who cares? Just hand over the chocolate. Nobody gets hurt." That kind of thing. And so in the last couple of years, I became very curious about that response. What is it that takes people's best thinking and throws it out the window at those times? And I learned a myriad of things.
Okay.
First of all, there is a physiological process that occurs when you have that reaction. When your rational thinking goes offline, and it's like this emergency response pops in that says, "We need the chocolate now. It doesn't matter what your best thinking is." The physiological change is a move from the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the nervous system that we're in when we are relaxing and breathing and digesting and resting and thinking, to the sympathetic system, which is where we are when we are revved up for action, fight or flight, feast or famine,
Right. Yeah.
fight or. And so I started to investigate what you could do to prevent that switch or to reverse it when you were aware of it. The first thing I discovered was that the screw it, just do it response was much more prevalent when people weren't eating regularly. It was much more prevalent in people. So people who didn't have regular, reliable nutrition, usually because they were trying to fast the weight off of them, or have one meal a day, or something like that.
Yeah.
They would be
paleo or something, right?
Yeah, anything that's a little more extreme. And I tell people I'd rather not argue about should you have, a whole foods plant-based diet or a carnivore's
Hmm.
diet. But anything that's more extreme that doesn't have regular, reliable nutrition
Yeah.
with macronutrients, micronutrients, makes you more likely to say, screw it, just do it.
Yeah.
In my experience with the 2,000 clients that we work with, uh, get about half the success rate when people want to do those types of diets.
Mm.
And I tell them that you can go back to that later on if you want to. But for 6 months, while you're beating this thing, where you're learning how to defeat your cravings, can
Hmm.
you eat more regularly, reliably, kind of more in the middle, more in the
Hmm.
middle?
Hmm.
That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. And so I had to learn, for example, myself, I went back and thought about some of the things I did that weren't cognitive work. I had to learn that sometimes when I had these cravings, there was an authentic physiological need behind them. So sometimes I'd
Okay.
crave chocolate at 3 in the afternoon because I didn't really have enough for lunch. And I found if I went and I had a
Mm.
kale banana smoothie, that craving would go away. Right. And then I realized I
Hmm.
could preempt the craving by having a kale banana smoothie. And then I was never bothered with the chocolate craving at all.
Uh-huh.
So that was the first
Right.
thing. The second thing had to do with breathing. There are certain types of breathing that stimulate your sympathetic system and get you revved up for
Okay.
action. Like if you're running away from a hungry bear and you go, you're flooding your system with oxygen. You're also telling your brain, look, dude, you better run.
Yeah.
This is time to go. If you do the opposite of that, where you breathe in for a count of 7 and out for
Uh-huh.
a count of 11, for example, and you do that a couple of
Uh-huh.
times. I'm not doing it now because it takes a lot of time. But
Yeah.
if you do that, you're signaling the brain, no, we have everything we need right now. It's not an
Yeah.
emergency. It's okay to rest and digest and think about things
Yeah.
for a while, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then there were a lot of other things like getting regular, reliable sleep um,
Uh,
makes a difference, makes a big difference. It seems to change the hormonal balance also. Um,
Absolutely.
Social connectedness, we're
Hmm.
a social animal, and when people feel isolated for too long, the brain starts to panic a little and think that there's an emergency. And by the way, when the brain thinks there's an emergency, it doesn't matter if there is one or there isn't one. It's only if it thinks that there is one. It will say, I need resources to deal with this. Get as many calories as you can as quickly as you can.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So social connectedness can help. Having enough water can help. Um,
Oh.
Removing the need for unnecessary decisions throughout the day can help also. If you're
Uh,
constantly put upon by not only food decisions, but who's going to take Jenny to soccer practice and what time is dinner and what suit should you wear today
hmm.
or what
Hmm.
dress should you wear?
Hmm. Hmm.
The more decisions you have to make over the course of the day, the less recourse to willpower you will have. Decisions, every little decision wears down your willpower, not just food decisions, but
Yeah.
in studies where they make people do math problems, they have a harder time resisting marshmallows after they've done a bunch of math problems.
Oh,
Uh,
wow. Okay.
so it turns out you have to give your brain a rest sometimes to recharge.
Uh-huh.
2 5-minute breaks, 2 5 decision 3-minute breaks during the day can make all the difference in the world.
Huh.
The other thing that can eliminate food decisions is having more hard and fast rules. So if I say I never have chocolate during the week, then all of my chocolate decisions are made for me during the week. I don't have to.
Uh,
That's why you don't have to use willpower indefinitely. You just kind of become a person that doesn't have chocolate during the week, and character trumps willpower. Character is what we habitually do at the moment of temptation. I'm just not that
uh,
kind of person. I don't eat chocolate during the week. Big deal, right?
yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
not a thief. I'm not an aggressive person. I don't go and smack
Yeah.
people when I get mad at them.
Yeah.
I just don't have chocolate during the week. Period. End of
Yeah.
story. Right.
Uh-huh.
Um, so there's this whole litany of things you can do to take care of yourself to prevent that. And the basic technique is still the same. You create at least one simple rule. Like I'll
Hmm.
always put my fork down between bites, or I'll always take a picture of my food before I eat it. It doesn't have to be something that makes you give up anything,
Hmm.
because it inserts a pause, and
Yeah.
that pause forces you to slow down and say, "There's no emergency here."
Yeah.
That's what the
Yeah.
pause does.
Yeah. The break. Yeah.
So you do that, then any thought in your mind that suggests that you're going to break that rule between now and the day that you die is your inner pig or your food monster or your Bad Betty, whatever you want to call it, but it's not you. And it's got to be something that you don't want to love and nurture, but something that makes you wake up and say, whoa, who's in charge? I'm not going to let that thing
Uh-huh.
be in charge.
Yeah.
And then you listen for that and you engage in all of these parasympathetic activities when you hear it to try to calm the brain. And then you disempower the logic. And
Hmm.
if you follow this plan, you not only can um, extinguish your cravings pretty quickly. There's a little more to it, but you can extinguish your cravings pretty quickly.
Uh-huh.
But you'll find that you have a more peaceful, easy, happy life along the process. So I'm thrilled to be doing the work
Ah,
that I do. I have a new book called
yeah.
Defeat Your Cravings.
Uh-huh.
That's all about this and kind of incorporates the best of the best from the old stuff. Um, and yeah,
Interesting. Yeah.
that was a
Yeah.
long-winded answer, but that's what I am.
Oh,
That's what I
no,
do.
no, I loved it. That was great. That was great. So is it the same sort of thing that people can use as well if it, not just food? I mean, maybe quitting smoking or, the same kind of it's that
Yes.
same
Oh,
kind of
absolutely.
reaction that people have. Having been a smoker at one point in my life, I understand, and food. And they're very similar in, oh, well, I'll just have one. It's okay. I'll just have one. And as soon as you have the
Yeah.
one, right, you're dead. You're dead. I mean, literally, but and
I,
figuratively.
I actually, well, literally and figuratively, right?
Yeah.
Actually got the idea.
Uh-huh.
Um, I was reading some alternative addiction treatment literature, and it was about
Hmm.
alcohol, mostly alcohol and drugs.
Okay. Okay.
A man named Jack Trimpey wrote a book called Rational Recovery, and
Hmm.
he bifurcates the mind and kind of talked about the fact that this thing inside of us is sociopathic, that it doesn't really know love. All it really wants is its stuff, alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
drugs, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of took that idea and ran with it. I was stimulated by reading his materials.
Mm.
I always
Yeah.
send people to him for drugs or alcohol
Uh-huh.
because he's got like probably 30 years experience working with
Yeah.
that, and I really focus mostly on food.
Uh-huh.
The but it's not only drugs and alcohol you can use it with. You can create productivity enhancing routines like
Ah.
I'll never have my morning coffee until I've organized my day in the computer, or
Okay. Yeah.
anything that you can draw a clear black and white line with,
Right.
you can
Yeah.
use this structure of mind to
Yeah.
work it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which makes so much sense. So much sense because I mean, we all do that, right? We're all have great plans for the morning, and then maybe we didn't get up with the alarm, or we didn't, or this didn't happen, or we're hungry, or gee, let's have a cup of coffee first. And
Yeah.
next thing you know, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you haven't done shit.
Right. Exactly. And I like to do shit in the morning.
Yeah.
I like to get it done. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
mostly I find
Uh-huh.
that if anybody is eating beyond their own best judgment, this doesn't just have to be for
Mm-hmm.
binge eaters. If you'd like to have more control, if you'd like to be able to say, look, this is how I want to eat and I'm going to follow through on it, then this is a technique that would work for you. So mostly I focus on food because I originally
Mm-hmm.
thought I was going to write a litany of books about a variety of different topics because I felt like I discovered gold. But I learned that there's just so much to helping people with food,
Oh
and
my
it
God.
was
Oh,
and it's extremely rewarding. I mean, I get notes from people every day that says
yeah.
that we saved their lives, and so yeah, it's
Well,
extremely rewarding.
and it's true. It's true. I'm sure that you did save their lives.
Well,
You know.
we live in a world where people have tacitly agreed to slowly kill themselves with food while they laugh it off.
Yeah.
You know, just
Yeah.
walk into a Walmart for God's sake and look what people are putting in their shopping carts,
I
and
don't.
stop and interview them about their health problems. I think
Yeah.
the World Health Organization recently put out a publication that said that cardiovascular disease is up. It's at least
Mm.
double. It's responsible for 31% of world deaths, and Diabetes is up 80%, and kidney disease, and all these diet reversible, diet preventable, or diet influenced diseases, disorders, and conditions
Uh-huh.
that can, it's a waste. There are billions of people that don't have to suffer the way that they do suffer. Well, everybody
Yeah.
says just eat a little in moderation.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
You
right.
know,
Exactly. It's like, no, don't, does not work that way. Does not work that way.
but I think Lewis Black said he knew the world was ending because he walked out of Starbucks and across the street was another Starbucks. And I think you could say the same thing about all the convenience stores and fast food places.
Yes.
There are all these corners in most major
Hmm.
metropolises where there is one on every single corner. There is a fast food. So if you wanted to walk from corner to corner to corner and slowly kill
Yeah.
yourself with food, you could have a field day.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd never have to leave. You could just live there. Just set up a tent. We've got people living in tents on the sidewalks already, which is a
So,
whole nother discussion and not for this podcast, but yeah.
could I tell you a little more about what I've
Yeah,
learned over the 8 years? That's
please.
different than from when I originally published the first book.
Uh-huh.
Um, I've learned about how cravings work physiologically a little more.
Mm.
And one of the most important things that I've learned is that having strong cravings is a sign of a healthy brain, not a
Mm-hmm.
sign of a sick brain. We're told we have it. People who really feel like they can't control themselves with food are told they have a disease.
Right.
And I mean, there are certain brain conditions where you don't have the ability to sense when you're full. There are certain chemicals and some food substances that prevent you from sensing when you're full. But for the most part, if you have very strong cravings, you're manifesting something physiologically that was a survival advantage 100,000 years ago.
Okay.
See, we had to be very good at finding, acquiring, and motivating ourselves to go get food. And
Mm-hmm.
so we became very sensitive to signals in the environment that sources of calories were available. Think of a caveman. Let's call him Thag. And first of all, I don't think there were eating disorders 100,000 years ago. I don't
No.
think that Thag was sitting around saying, "Oi, Marta, ate too much mammoth." I don't think
Yeah,
that
right.
was,
No. Anything they could get was what they ate. Right.
yeah, whatever they
So,
could
so
get.
to live. Yeah.
And then when you did get it, you had as much as possible because you didn't know when the next meal was coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And no way to save it. I mean, we've got refrigerators and freezers, right?
Yes,
They didn't have any of those things. You ate it while it was still good before it
exactly.
made you sick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So imagine that Thag sees a chimpanzee and he follows the chimpanzee to a banana tree.
Uh-huh.
And after the chimpanzee is done, he goes and eats all the bananas he can get, brings them back for his family. Thag's brain thinks, ooh, chimpanzee means bananas, right? The next time that he sees a chimpanzee, he starts salivating a little bit and he runs after
Right.
the chimp. Now he's got
Right.
a habit. Now he gets happy and motivated when he sees a chimpanzee taking him to the banana tree. Well, our brains still work like that. You pass the sign for the donut store and your brain says, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, this is great. Let's go into the donut store and get us some coffee and chocolate.
Right. And the smell when you go by
And the
it as
smell.
well. That
Absolutely.
gets you. Yeah.
Your brain says, hook me up, baby. It's time for
Yeah.
a donut and coffee. Um, okay. So it's the same exact process that's occurring. And it was a healthy thing 100,000 years ago. It's only in the modern food environment that it's not really signaling the availability of nutrition. It is signaling the availability of calories. But now let's look at the process of habit formation and habit extinction. The habit is formed when the signal and source are unexpected. So the brain is wired to
Okay.
find new sources of nutrition and calories because food was scarce back then. So the corollary here is the first time that Thag sees the chimp run over to the tree, he's going to get a bigger dopamine hit. He's going to feel happier, get a bigger dopamine hit, and enjoy
Yeah.
the bananas a little more. The second time, it's not quite so exciting. By the 50th time, it's like he'll do it, but
It's normal.
yeah, just kind of everyday routine, right? Um, Same thing. The first time you see you experience a new donut or a new kind of coffee,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
your brain throws an awful lot of dopamine at you because it's trying to create a habit quickly. Now, this could be a good or a bad thing, depending upon whether or not you want the craving and the habit. Maybe you don't want to crave a donut every time you pass the store because you're, working on your health for some reason and you don't want to eat it that often. Um, I had a friend 20 years ago, I always remember him used to do this. We'd be eating lunch and he'd order a new sandwich or something and he'd take a bite and he'd go, oh, that's too good. Glenn, if it's too good, it's no good. If he didn't want to crave it because he had an eating problem also. So
Okay.
he learned to be on the alert for anything that was too good because he didn't want to have it. And then he'd make a rule for himself, like I'll only have this on Saturday. I'm not going to eat these anymore because he didn't want to crave it every time that he passed it. If it's too good, it's no good. You can use the same phenomena though to make your diet more rewarding and fun. So if you understand that the brain responds to unexpected pleasure, you could research 15 different recipes and rotate them through your diet so that your brain doesn't really know when. And you research all these recipes that are on your plan and compliant with your food rules.
Yeah. Right.
And then you're going to get more dopamine every time you go back to one because it's been a month since you got to have that particular meal. You can use that to your advantage. Okay. Now let's say you want to get rid of a craving. People think that, well, if you stop having the donut every time you pass the coffee shop, that every day it's going to get a little easier.
No, worse.
It doesn't really work like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
What actually happens is there's a little honeymoon period, and then somewhere between day 4 and day 7, you're going to have worse cravings than you ever experienced before, right?
Yeah.
And then it starts to go down and maybe a little spike at the end. We call that an extinction burst in the behavioral literature.
Okay.
And the reason for it, let's go back to Fag and the banana tree, is that the brain doesn't want to give up learning that acquired nutrition and calories. It doesn't want to give up its source of nutrition and calories.
Okay.
And so let's say Fag follows the monkey to the tree and the banana tree is empty. Well, if that happens a couple of times, he'll have a little honeymoon period where he kind of wants to stop following the monkey, but then he's going to want to do it more than ever before. That's because the brain wants to test out, gee, maybe sometimes this chimp goes to a tree with bananas in it and sometimes it doesn't. And having a chimp that sometimes finds bananas is better than not having any chimp at all, especially in an environment where you didn't know where you're going to find the next banana tree, right? And so the brain doesn't give it up. It tests out this hypothesis that maybe the bananas are intermittently available. This is even more powerful than the really wonderful first experience. It's called intermittent reinforcement. And if it's done with a variable ratio, meaning it's not like every third time that he follows the monkey, but it's randomly available, that's the most motivating that you can get. Think about a slot machine. You don't know when that's going to pay off. If that slot machine only paid off at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, you wouldn't bother showing up at the casino all week long. But if you don't know when it's going to pay off, you're always there pulling, right?
Yes. And putting your money in.
Yeah.
More importantly.
So what this tells us is if you want to extinguish a craving, at all costs, you want to avoid intermittent reinforcement. If you don't have to give up something entirely, you could say, I am only going to have donuts on Saturday morning after my workout. And then your brain will learn that there's no other signal for the availability of donuts. So when it's passing during the week, it eventually doesn't have that craving. It's only Saturday morning after your workout at the donut shop. So you learn that. And also, you don't go into battle prepared with only a plastic helmet. You don't just willy-nilly say, well, I'm giving up donuts this week. You really tell yourself, this is a serious endeavor. You're going to go through this extinction burst. You're going to have worse cravings than you ever have. What are you going to support? What are you going to do to support yourself when that happens? Are you going to have meals prepared in, the Tupperware or Pyrex or something that you can just pop in the oven. Maybe you're going to have a little more whole fruit at that time to help you with a little bit of the
Mm-hmm.
sugar craving, but still get
Mm-hmm.
the guar and the
Mm-hmm.
pectin. Um,
Right.
Maybe you're going to make more decision-free breaks throughout the day. Maybe you're going to pay more attention to your sleep. Maybe you're going to drink more water, have a little more social contact.
Yeah.
You need a plan to get through the extinction burst. And
Uh-huh.
usually it's better to work on one habit at a time. Sometimes people are just eating so badly they need to do several habits all at once. But sometimes it's usually better to do one habit at a time.
Yeah.
Know what you're going to do to get through that. And then the other thing is not to get too cocky when the cravings are gone.
Yes.
See, because the brain is very efficient and it's a calorie finding machine where we all live on top of these calorie finding machines. The brain will not erase the learning. What it will do is label it dormant. So it will say,
Huh.
monkeys no longer lead to banana trees. And so let's not bother this guy. Let's not bother Thag with banana cravings whenever it sees a monkey anymore. The craving is labeled as dormant, so the brain doesn't waste energy. But if you signal the brain that the banana is available again,
Right. They're
boom,
back in season.
and
Yeah.
you've reset the extinction curve, and you got to go through it all over again. So I tell people, once you've broken out of prison, don't go back to see your friends. Run away as far as you can. Right. There was one more thing about the craving that I
Yeah.
wanted to tell you. Remember that your taste buds will adjust. There's a phenomenon called downregulation. If you have a donut every day, by the end of a week, apples are not going to taste as sweet to you, nor will you be able to enjoy the
Okay.
natural sugars in vegetables as much. Your system will downregulate its response, its pleasure response, both in terms of taste and dopamine to natural
Okay.
sugar, natural foods.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
This is why people say that they hate fruit and vegetables,
Yeah.
because there's so much overstimulation in our society that we've lost that natural ability. However, there is a corresponding process called upregulation, which will double the sensitivity of your taste buds over the course of a month or two if you eliminate a lot of the unnatural sugars in your diet.
Mm-hmm.
So you will actually get more food pleasure than you thought possible once you're on the other side of this curve, but you got to go through it. The only way out is through.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to tell you about cravings.
Wow.
Yeah, they're never gone. They're only labeled dormant, but you can defeat them entirely. You don't have to be bothered by them at all, as long as you don't go back and visit them. Or that if you are going to go back and visit them, that it's in very circumscribed circumstances, so your brain learns the only circumstances that it's available in.
Right. Like the only time you get to eat a big gooey dessert, which is not one of my favorite things anyways, but most people like that, is on your birthday or something like that, right? Just one time, that's your birthday present kind of thing. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
So that's what I've been up to. I kind of put it together in
away from the sun.
Oh, the sun's bothering your eyes.
Yeah, that's okay.
I can tell what time it is by where the sun mark is.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there anything else in particular you wanted to ask me or tell me about, or what the plan?
I don't know. You've given us so much information, given me so much information to think about, which makes so much sense. I mean, when my own personal experience, right? Because I was a fat kid, very fat kid.
How did you get thin?
Actually, I was in graduate school. I had just started graduate school, and I had been on Weight Watchers, when it first came out, and I don't know what else. I mean, all of these different diets and stuff, and nothing ever worked. Or if it did, it was for, the X amount of time. And then, as you're saying, you go back. But I had when I was in college and graduate school, back then we used to have a doctors, and they provided medical health, and they had, clinics and all that kind of stuff. You didn't have to go. Now they don't even have buildings for them.
Yeah.
Let alone the people in them. But anyways, but the doctor that I was going to said, she said, I'm just going to tell you. She said, if you don't lose the weight now, you're going to be fighting it the rest of your life.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, that scared me. So that's what I did. I started, she gave me a I don't want to call it a diet plan, but it was a healthy eating kind of thing. And I lost, I don't know, 25 pounds, 30 pounds, somewhere in there. Never put it back on again. I mean, I've gone up a little bit at one point, but
Good
then
for
I was
you.
like, okay.
Good for you.
Yeah. Well, and
she
then
scared you straight.
She did. I mean, and she wasn't nasty about it, or, you know what I mean? She was just very common sense, kind of, no, you don't understand.
Yeah. But the other thing about the pleasure of like living life as a healthy person
Uh-huh.
is that you feel more present. You're not digestively distressed all the time. You're not dragging around the extra weight to tire you out. You can move more easily.
Right.
I remember when I stopped overeating all the time, all of a sudden it felt like everyone was smiling at me. And it was, I realized they were always smiling at me. I just wasn't there. I was
Uh-huh.
thinking about how can I lose the weight and when's my next meal and what am I going to have and how am I going to stop myself from
Yeah.
having too much and how do I hide the evidence and what event do I have coming up that people are going to see me
Yeah.
and you can get rid of all that. You don't have to live with that. You can
Mm-hmm.
just kind
Oh,
of
no,
be
exactly.
present and enjoy your life. So
Yeah. Well, and there's so many good tasting foods out there that are healthy.
and the
It doesn't have to
internet.
be. I mean, I've never been a lover of chocolate, so that was never my downfall. It's like people could give me chocolate, and it's like, no, that's all right. Go, you eat it. I don't want it. But there were lots of other things that I did like.
I've learned to make these brownies
Uh-huh.
with carob and beans instead of flour and dates instead of
Okay.
sugar. And they're
Ah.
still a little rich, so I can't have them that often, but once or twice a month when I really want something that reminds me of that
Uh-huh.
chocolate feeling, I'll do that and it's
Uh-huh.
delicious. I got it from Dr. Furman's
Ah.
website. But the internet is
Yeah.
a wealth of information. I mean, there are so
Oh my God,
many.
these days. Ah. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, you decide what dietary philosophy you have. I'm basically salt, starch, oil, and sugar free. And you type it into YouTube or TikTok, and you're going to find a wealth of people who are showing you what to do. So you don't have
Ah.
to suffer for
Okay.
pleasure. As a matter of fact, you'll get more pleasure out of food
Mm.
because you're not feeling guilty about it. You're not worried
Ah.
about the impact it's going to have
Right.
on you physically.
Yes.
It's kind of like driving is more fun when you know that you're going to stop at the red lights and yield at the yield signs because you can just daydream. You know that the difficult
Uh-huh.
decisions are made for you. Um,
Uh-huh.
I find
Yeah.
that, like Jim Rohn said, a life of discipline is better than a life of regret. And I find that to be very true. I find that the
Mm-hmm.
more disciplined I've become, the freer that I feel, the more I can enjoy my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the other part of it as well is that people have to get moving. If you're not doing something with your body,
Yeah.
that's the other side of it.
I have the
You
hardest time
eat for
convincing my audience.
fuel. Yeah, I mean, you're that's what food was. That's how it started, right? It's for fuel
Hmm.
so that you can go out and do things.
Hmm.
And certain kinds of food make you draggy and kind of, your brain doesn't work as well and stuff like that. And people don't put those things together.
Yeah. That eating is for living. Eating is
Yeah,
for living. Most people live to eat instead.
yeah,
Totally
yeah,
agree. I
yeah,
totally
yeah,
agree.
exactly. exactly. But, you know, I don't know. The last 40 years or so with television and all of that kind of stuff, and now with the internet and everything, I mean, that's not the message that they give,
I mean,
unless you watch specific things. But
we're not really built to spend our days between four walls staring at a screen, hoping that
yeah,
electrons are going to flow into our bank account. It's not really how we're meant to live, you know? And the older I get, the more time I spend outside, the more that I
yeah,
breathe, and I realize, it is what it is. We live in kind of a crazy world. Jakarta Krishnamurti, I think that's how you pronounce his name.
uh,
He said
yeah.
that it's no sign of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. It's no sign of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society.
Oh God,
So
yeah,
I don't strive to be average. I don't strive to be normal.
yeah,
I don't want to be like everybody else because
right.
everybody else is slowly deteriorating after age 50. To the point that they're going out in pieces. They're having all these surgeries and disabilities.
Oh
And
my God, yes.
yeah, I don't strive for that. Just about every male in my family has had a heart attack by the time they're 40.
Oh my
And
God.
I've escaped that fate. I got my
Uh-huh.
eating together right around the time I was 40. And I'll be
Okay.
60 this year. And
All right.
it seems like I've escaped that fate so far. And
Good
I,
deal.
I periodically run into someone in their mid 80s or even early 90s at the top of the mountain. And I think, man, I'm going to be that person. I'm going to get up there when I'm 85. I'm going to be there. So,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't do mountain climbing, but but I like my husband and I go for a walk. We do
good
like
enough.
2 miles every morning and to the gym. And um so my husband was an athlete
Hmm.
growing up. I mean, literally, on the football team and
Hmm.
all that kind of stuff, basketball and all that. And so he's still into that, right? He has to, which is great because it has dragged me into going into the gym.
That's great. How long are you married?
We have been together I was just figuring out the other day, we've been together for 37 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations. You're
Thank you.
still going
Thank
to the
you.
gym together. That's a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
sign.
Well, yeah, not right. Not today. I don't know. I did something to my arm. And so I
Oh
work with the
no.
weights and it's like, oh God, then so I'm taking a short vacation
Good.
from the gym and I've got my little 2-pound weights. I figure I'll start at the very beginning again and try and
Yeah,
work the
be
muscles.
careful. Be careful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Good.
No, exactly. But yeah, no, I think I look pretty good for 68.
I think you look pretty good for 68 also. Susan, would you like me to tell people where they could get a free copy of the book?
Yes, please,
Okay.
absolutely, and I will also put it in the show notes so they
Thank
can
you.
find it there as well. Yep.
If you go to defeatyourcravings.com
Uh-huh.
and click the big blue button for the free book and reader bonuses,
That's what I see that. Yes.
you see that? Click
Uh-huh.
the big blue button and sign up for the reader bonus list. You will get a free copy of the book in Kindle, Nook, or PDF format. If you're
Okay.
someone who has to have the paperback or the Audible format, there's that option, but there's a small charge for that, customary charge. We also have recorded a full-length set of coaching sessions, so you can see how
Oh
this works in
wow.
practice, because it
Uh-huh.
sounds a little weird, like why does Susan have this doctor on who has got a pig inside of him? And um, it sounds a little cruel in the abstract, but it's actually a very compassionate process. And
Yes.
I wanted you to see people going from feeling hopeless and despairing and confused about
Yeah.
food to feeling very hopeful and confident
Yeah.
and enthusiastic. And
Uh-huh.
there's a set of food plan starter templates.
Uh-huh.
So a set of rules that might match any particular dietary philosophy you have, including ketogenic or paleo or whole food plant-based or
Mhm.
calorie counters or carb counters or point counters.
Yeah.
But whatever you might be doing, we have a starter template, and you take it and you customize it for yourself.
Ah,
Whole bunch of other free
great.
stuff there, but it's all at defeatyourcravings.com. Click the big blue button.
Yep. Yeah. Well, you have to go down a little bit for the big blue button.
Just a little bit, depending upon your screen.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, no, there is one at the top too. Never mind. There's one at the top. I was down at the bottom.
Oh, I see. There's one at the top and the bottom.
Yes. You make it very easy for everybody.
You can also click the free stuff link in the navigation bar.
Yes.
If you go to defeatyourcravings.com, you won't have a problem, I promise.
I know it's pretty obvious, unless you get pulled in by the picture of all the food.
That's true. But a lady standing victorious on top of all the food, right?
That's right. Yes.
Like,
but she's a lot smaller than the pizza and the.
Oh, well, the reason for that is that, besides having to fit it on the website,
Yeah.
but the reason for that is that food feels overwhelming and impossible to beat. People get very despairing about, they'll say, I fought a war with a pizza and I lost. But that's
You're
what
right.
it feels.
They do.
Yeah.
They do say that. Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to depict being able to defeat that despite perceiving it like that. Yeah.
Anyway. No, absolutely.
And I had to fit it on the website too.
Yes. Yeah. I know. Maybe she could have a green shirt on or a blue shirt or something, just so she's not the same color as
Oh, that's an idea.
as all the food.
So,
It's just a suggestion.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Okay. Is there anything else?
Nope. I don't think so. People are going to know where to find you, which we've already told them, but I will put it, as I say, in the show notes. And I will say what I always say at the end, which is neither of us are doctors, and this is not medical advice.
Right.
And that I have no doubt that if people have questions, that you'll be happy to help them with that as well at your website.
Yeah, there's a contact us button if you need to contact us. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
So that's it, and I will see everybody next week.
Okay.
This has been Healthy Tips After 50 with Susan Rosen. To stay on the cutting edge of the most effective health strategies, subscribe to this podcast and let us know what you thought of the show with a comment or like on iTunes. Visit healthytipsafter50.com for this episode's show notes, more resources, and free offers.